Where Dave Ramsey really hits the ball out of the park and is exceptional is helping people who are in bad, rough financial positions, helping them regain control of their life by paying off debt. And therefore, going through that process, what he does is he builds a lot of trust with a lot of people. So what happens is people go, wow, if Dave helped me get out of debt, Dave is my savior. Dave must be amazing at creating wealth as well. And the truth is, it's not so true, because the biggest thing I can tell you with Robert Kiyosaki is that he understands leverage. And when, I just did a video, and I'll put it in the link above, on why Robert Kiyosaki loves whole life insurance. And I know he does this himself. And what I can say is, this is just my chicken scratch drawing to prove a point here. But the principle remains, where if you do this and you save for 5 years, once again, you're capitalizing. So this is combining saver mentality, right? But also leveraging other people's money. Hey, what's going on, cash flow hackers? It's Chris with Life 180. And for this video, we're gonna have some fun. I wanna talk to you about Dave Ramsey, Robert Kiyosaki, the difference between the two, because let's face it, I think in the world of personal finance education, these guys exist at two polar opposite ends of the pendulum, right? You got Dave Ramsey, who is Mr. Debt-Free, Mr. Pay Cash, Cash is King, debt is bad, all these different things. That he tries to get you to invest in mutual funds, tries to get you to save in 401ks and maximize everything that way to be able to, hit retirement and ultimately be in a better position. There's a lot of stuff that he does that's really good on the debt side. I've long been a believer that Dave is fantastic when it comes to helping people get out of debt, but he's also fantastic at keeping people middle class. He always preaches about trying to get people to $1 million, right? When the reality is having $1 million is not going to accomplish a lot for most people when it comes to the fact that 30, 40 years from now, when they hit retirement, or even 20 years from now, when you account for inflation and you account for what the interest rate environments and everything are going to be, the fixed market environments are going to be potentially, which we just don't know. We have no clarity on what those variables, entail. We have no idea what's going on. So what is the result? It's not a matter of how much money you can save. It's a matter of the quality of life that money will give you. Now, on the other side of the pendulum, we have Robert Kiyosaki. Robert Kiyosaki is all about leverage. It's all about other people's money. He's the best-selling author of the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he ultimately has leveraged real estate, and now he's gotten into other assets. He's all about free market economics. He's totally against socialism, and I love this guy. He's amazing. I've done a couple videos on him, but I started thinking about this the other day. I was like, how can we simplify this conversation? Because both of the guys have merit. They have their own skill sets, their own places where they succeed. But it hit me the other day when I was doing a video, and I wanted to do this video specifically to simplify the conversation about the major difference in the philosophy between Dave Ramsey and Robert Kiyosaki. So here we go. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hop over to my iPad. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through this, and I wanna show kind of what I'm talking about. Now, both of these guys, I would say Dave and Robert, I'll just call them RK, both think that debtors are bad, right? Now, what do I mean by debtors being bad? I mean being a toxic debtor that is bad, like using debt to buy depreciating assets, using toxic debt, like unsecured debt, like credit cards. Very, very bad. I think we can all agree on that, right? And where Dave Ramsey really hits the ball out of the park and is exceptional is helping people who are in bad, rough financial positions, helping them regain control of their life by paying off debt. And therefore, going through that process, what he does is he builds a lot of trust with a lot of people. So what happens is people go, well, if Dave helped me get out of debt, Dave is my savior. Dave must be amazing at creating wealth as well. And the truth is, it's not so true, because what I want to do here is, like, let's take a look at this. We look at the numbers, so you can see the graph here at 0. A debtor, let's just talk about it in principle. When you look at from an individual perspective, let's just talk about this in the case of buying a car. I like using cars in this scenario because the principle goes across every asset, and cars are something that everybody buys, and we all have habits with things, with money we spend, major capital purchases, whether it's vacations every year, whether it's cars that we buy, whether it's houses and the best way to finance a house. The principles don't change here with money and how money works, right? And principles of using other people's money, not interrupting compound interest, and creating what we call positive arbitrage, which is a huge deal, and that's going to make a lot more sense here shortly. So what we have here in the debtor, and the reason this is bad is because, the debtor, year one, you can see down here, goes $30,000 in debt. And so if we're talking about this example and we're talking about buying a car, well, the next 5 years they spend, paying back the loan year after year after year, and finally, year 5, you pay off the loan. And typically what happens when people get to this point in America is they buy a new car. So they go right back into debt. So here they are again, right? And so when they go back into debt because the car's probably got 150,000 miles on it, or maybe a little less, but they don't want to put money into repairs. And so they just say, I'm going to buy a new car, and cash flow, I can manage the $450, $500 car payment, which is absurd, but they do that and they go from there. And so then the next 5 years, they pay it back. And you can see here, they're always working from a negative position and they're trying to get back to zero. Now, when they do this, they have, they take on what we call interest expense, right? So they pick up interest expense. And so the idea is, in order to avoid these interest expenses every single year, the whole idea is like, if I could pay cash for that, and this is where Dave Ramsey comes in, if I could pay cash for that asset, I would avoid the interest expense. So Dave Ramsey falls into the camp of being a saver. Now, a saver is saying, listen, don't be a dummy, I'm gonna go into here, don't do what debtors do and go into debt, right? Don't do that, right? We don't want to do that. We don't want to go into debt just to get back to zero, right? Because you're exposed. And I will agree, pardon the bad graphics there, but I will agree that being a saver is more optimal than being a debtor, because what happens if you hit a down market at any point in time during year 3 here, year 3 here, whatever it is in any market, and you can't afford to pay this back, well, you could have your car repossessed. You could have a lot of bad things happen to you. You're not financially stable. Whereas when you are saving for a car, if you happen to have a bad time happen here, you have a little more flexibility. You have some money in the bank. Maybe you probably haven't overextended yourself on a car. And at worst case scenario, I guess, saving, the principle of saving, this is the concept, by saving before you buy, you've implemented self-discipline. You've had a financial strategy. You've shown that you have the ability to delay gratification. So those are all really, really good things, right? And so from Dave Ramsey's perspective, and I'm just going to write Dave here because this is Dave to a T, this is what you're doing. So the idea is you're going and you're saving for these 5 years, and then you're buying the car. But because you're going to buy another car, from a cash flow perspective, you're still saving year in, year out. And then year 5, if you want to buy another car, you could buy another car, right? And then you do that. And Dave's okay, as long as you can pay cash for the car, and as long as you're doing your other savings things, then do that. Now, this is the biggest thing that I can say. I want you to think about something here. When you pay cash for the car, think about this. Look at the end of every 5 years. Where do we wind up? We wind up right back at zero on both lines. Now, during the journey to get to the zero, you are in a better position as a saver. But the bottom line is, look at this. At the end of the time, at the end of the car buying cycles, you wind up, I could run this into perpetuity. I could have 7, 8, 9, 10 car buying cycles, 50 years worth of this. And it would be the same principle. These would run out all the same way. It's important to understand. So this is Dave Ramsey. This is what Dave Ramsey's doing. So the key thing to understand here is, yes, you're in a better position by doing what Dave is doing. You're in a better position than where this debtor is, right? Because you're avoiding the interest expense. But the bottom line is, what's happening here is, as a saver, yes, you're avoiding that interest expense, but what you're also avoiding is you just saved all this money. You could be earning compounding interest from this point moving forward, if you wanted to be, from this point moving forward. But the problem is, every time you pay cash for that, you interrupt that money. You interrupt the ability for that money to be earning compound interest. And that is the problem, because when you pay cash for something, not only do you you pick up that asset and you got to keep saving for it, but you interrupt the compounding interest of that money. So we call that opportunity cost. You can't just calculate what you eliminate for an interest expense, which is what we're avoiding down here, right? You're eliminating that interest expense. You can't calculate that without taking into consideration what you're losing for opportunity cost and what your money could continue to earn for you should you allow it to keep growing, right? that as soon as you spend that cash, you lose the ability for that money to be a cash producing asset for you, and that has to be taken into consideration. And that is where Robert Kiyosaki comes in. This is what I'm talking about. The biggest thing I can tell you with Robert Kiyosaki is that he understands leverage. And when, I just did a video, and I'll put it in the link above, on why Robert Kiyosaki loves whole life insurance, and I know he does this himself. And what I can say is, this is just my chicken scratch drawing to prove a point here. But the principle remains, where if you do this and you save for 5 years, once again, you're capitalizing. So this is combining saver mentality, right? But also leveraging other people's money. So the idea that you need to save, that you need to have a system and the discipline and the self-discipline and the delayed gratification to get to a place, those are all principles that you need to implement. However, as you get to year 5 here, right, now what is happening, and this is a different scale, right, as far as like the drawings, you can see I got like 8 cycles in here instead of 4, which I did on the other pages, because I wanted to get you an idea of a rough idea of the compounding curve to make you see what it looks like. Because you can see here we capitalize and we borrow against the money in our account, right? And then we borrow against it and we leverage it and we pay back. But when we pay it back, the money that we pay back, as soon as we pay that back, we never interrupted compounding in our main account, right? And so as we never interrupted compounding in our main account, that money's continuing to grow. So by the time we pay back the loan that we took against our cash value, right, we never interrupted that cash value. So when we're done paying back that loan, the initial account deposit is worth more than what it was when we started. So if I started with a $30,000 account value, by the time I get done paying that money back, I'm probably going to have like a 36K account value or a little more, right? I'm being conservative. And that's just in year 1, right? That's just in this cycle. And so then we repeat that over and over and over again, and the compounding gets better and better and better. And so that is the idea of this, is like you're combining the delayed gratification with a forced savings plan by saving and creating that discipline inside of the policy, right? Inside of a whole life insurance policy. That is the vehicle we use for these. And then what you can do is you can borrow against it, or you can use the cash value line of credit, depending on how you want it to go, what your need is for flexibility versus reducing your cost of money. Those are all things to take into consideration. You can get a cash value line of credit for in the 2 to 3% range. Policy loans going to be in the 5% range. Policy loans come with more flexibility, but the principle you can execute at the same rate, right? So when you do this, you are going down and you're just paying it back, and every time you can see, every time we do is higher than the time before, right? We pay that back, it goes up, and check it out, right? Check it out. And it gets bigger and bigger. So when you start the loan, and the longer the policy goes, the more mature it gets, the more efficient it goes, and the more efficient your car buying purchase in this example becomes, right? The more you want to participate in that. So what I would say is that this is a way that if you were to implement this, and you were just to do nothing except for change the way that maybe you and your spouse purchased your cars, right? This is just one very simple example. It can add a couple $100,000 or more to your retirement plan, right? To you having a volatility buffer, an account, with, let's say, $250,000 in it, right, at retirement right here, right? If you had that, what would an extra $250,000 in an account that you didn't need, or that was there as a volatility buffer, simply because you operated more efficiently with the way you made your purchasing decisions? I don't know about you, but for most people I know, that would be extremely beneficial for. So what I want to encourage you to do is think about, if you could flow your money through a system like this, how much of a difference or an impact would that make in your personal financial life, right? So if you think this is something you want to learn about, you can go down below in the description. We have a link there. You can go talk to one of the agents with Life 180 and have a conversation with them, have what we call a clarity call to see, so you could learn more about this, to see how it maybe would fit into your life and your financial strategy, if it's a good fit at all, or if you're looking for more clarity to understand it better, somebody on the team can explain it to you in a more personalized fashion. But I think this principle is something that I really wanted to convey to everybody. I think this principle is something that everybody needs to understand. I believe personally that if the world understood this concept and principle, it would be much different. And so from this perspective, this is why when people say, what's the major difference between Robert Kiyosaki, is that he understands the concept of leverage, of arbitrage, of wealth creation. The idea of paying cash for things like we have what Dave Ramsey does when I'm looking at the board here. The idea of what Dave Ramsey does, that's a very scarcity mindset mentality. That is a way you cannot save your way to wealth. That's one thing Dave Ramsey says is savers are losers. You need to use leverage. And this is simply the most secure form of leverage inside of a system that you can use without taking a lot of risk. Most people, don't understand that you don't have to take a ton of risk by using leverage. It's getting small marginal spreads, we call arbitrage, to be able to create massive leverage over time if you implement it in a system and have a long-term view. And whether you're 25 and looking to do this, or whether you're 45 or 50, 55 and looking to do this, there are ways. Obviously, the older you get, the tougher it gets because you have less time to compound. But the opportunity still exists. So if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comment section below. I will do my best to engage with you. If you haven't already, please subscribe, hit that bell, that way you get notified every time we launch a new video. We got all sorts of great content coming out. But until next video, have a blessed, inspirational day, and we'll talk to you soon. See ya.